Alright, go ahead and get this show on the road. Welcome to the second review. You guys got a sick 2-0 while I was gone. I'm a proud man, proud teacher. So we're just gonna go ahead and get right into it. So as we launch this up, we spent last week talking a lot about early movements to secure hours. So whether we need to bring numbers, whether what resources we can allocate around the map in order to make sure we're securing specific objectives. Making sure as a team we're noting which objectives we want to play for and how we might play. And then the other big thing was resource allocation in the mid game. So who should be playing in what areas and why. So we'll go ahead and hopefully see some improvements in that. I already noted I don't really care too much for going too deep into the drafts of these games, as long as you guys are playing on comfort heroes and you feel like you have relative ease of execution. The Oracle Centaur, pretty good. You pick the Centaur with the Willow, that's perfect. I do think that blind picking Ursa can lead to issues if you're not careful. There's some carry matchups that are a little yikes for him, I think. I think like something like Troll could have been particularly scary, maybe. But they picked CK, so it winds up working out. Nothing with the CK pick. Last pick Spectre, so it's CK offlane, and you last pick Viper because you're smart people who recognize that this team drafted Spectre, didn't ban Viper. Pretty cut and dry on that one. So when you have drafts like this, in which you're never super scared of their carry outscaling you in this game. Ursa's a pretty okay matchup versus Spectre late game. You also have the break of Viper. And you have a pretty strong lane of Centaur, Dark Willow. So off the bat, we're not particularly scared of this Spectre just like taking over the game in like 1v9ing or something. So that's really nice when, trying to analyze what you think, how you think the game progression will go. And it's something I encourage you guys to try to do before a game starts, is you should all try to have some relative picture or relative idea of how the game is going to progress. So how you think the lanes will go, what moves you can make coming out of the lanes. If the lanes go well, what can we do with the pressure? How can we move around the map? And it's important to know sometimes you don't think your lanes are going to be well. So identifying if our lanes don't go well, what do we need to prioritize in order to make sure we can scale into the mid game? And these are all things that I'm not expecting you to know the answers to, but they're thought exercises. There's things to practice thinking about Dota at a deeper level. Alright, so let's get into the game here. Ta-da. Alright, so we have a team movement here. I love this. We're all running towards this top lane. Looks like we're maybe thinking about a lane swap. I haven't watched this, so this is the first time I'll be watching these. But I do think, right, you putting the Ursa versus Spectre seems pretty beneficial for the Ursa. Ursa should free farm. You can pressure the Spectre still. And the Centaur should do a little bit better versus CK than your Ursa. So in a way, we're prioritizing giving our carry the best start possible, which is you can never really go wrong with. This move. Nicely done. This should be a kill. So something to take note of. I mean, it's just a slight execution thing. It's by far more efficient to Fortune's End and then do the Dark Willow Bramble. You're okay with Ursa skilling Q for First Blood because he might want that for CSing anyways. But forcing your Viper to go Q is generally pretty bad. Yeah, I don't know if looks like he's a stand-in, so I won't harp on it too much. But he wants to go Nether Toxin. So if he's forced to go Q to get the First Blood, and he doesn't get it, it's really crippling to his first two waves as a Viper. So that's just something to keep in mind when executing these things. And now we're awkward standoff for the runes, but we're gonna get a 2-for-2 trade-off here. And we're going to lane swap. Enemy either does it. You do a nice job of. I'd be very careful on where you do the lane swaps. So if their ward's any closer towards this mid lane here, if it's like on like up here or it's even on your own high ground, you'll have trouble doing the lane swap how you did it. Because they'll have seen this coming from the mid lane, so they can start running immediately. Which, I mean, is slightly good for you because they'll have to run further than you will, but it's still less than ideal. So just when you do start to do the lane swaps, just be careful on where you know the enemy vision is going to be. It's going to be somewhere around mid. So just keep that in the back of your heads as we're making that rotation. We're going to talk about a couple of these lanes. I do really like this swap here. Spectre doesn't really do anything to Ursa. And Oracle can purge off all of Warlock's stuff. So there's really absolutely nothing that can be done here. When aggro laning, and I guess just when playing the offlane in general, keeping in mind, I believe we had talked about it last week, but we want to prioritize keeping the lane as close to our tower as possible. That's kind of the name of the game for every lane. And if we look bottom, that's hopefully something similar could be going down here. I did see that this range creep gets denied. So you get zoned out as the Centaur and the Willow. You guys have to be communicating. This goes for every single lane, every single side lane in Dota. Somebody has to communicate who's getting the range creep. So if you TK as the Centaur, you don't think you can walk up and get this range creep without, dying practically. You'll eat a stun, you'll eat like 3 Skywrath nukes. Maybe you don't want to sacrifice that. You need to communicate that to your Willow so he doesn't use Brambles trying to do harass onto the Skywrath here. He can bramble for this range creep, and then you get that. Luckily, they don't deny it, so you don't miss out on the experience, but an efficiency thing here for side laning that you'll start to see it kind of come into play. And, of course, the salve here. Probably a slight itemization thing. I probably would have just started stick versus Skywrath. We fly one out, we fly out a salve. That's fine with me. Yeah, we've noted that Centaur might not do amazing, but our Ursa should ideally free farm. They haven't really gotten any pulls off up here, so this is all fine and dandy. Through. Nice aggro here, Yop. Nicely done. Another one of these things, Cryptic, you just use your Q on the Warlock to trade with him, but the Warlock doesn't trade particularly well, so you and the Ursa should be working together to make sure we get this range creep. And if Spectre's posturing like this, Spectre's like, oh, I can deny this creep, because the Ursa's in the middle of denying my creeps. Oracle, if you don't use your nuke and the Spectre is going to try and deny this, you just walk up, you just beat the shit out of him, press your spells on him. He's got 4 creeps on him. Very, very important thing to always keep note of in side lanes. is who has more creeps. The Spectre, if he goes for this deny and he tries to, and this creep dies, this range creep dies, he's going to be eating 4 creeps. It's just like less than ideal. He eats this. He eats the root, then he gets slid by Ursa. That's a lot of harass for him. Instead, the Spectre gets the deny. That's just it hurts a little bit. And we're gonna kill this guy over here because he walks up. Nice, done. So right now, right here, you should just be walking over to the Pole Cryptic. There's literally nothing else for you to do here. There's a creep wave and a half here. You absolutely, under no circumstances, want Spectre to be allowed to farm multiple waves under this tower for free. And by for free, I mean the trade-off being that you would pull. And so, doesn't look like we go pull. We're just trying to harass the Spectre here. And notice how... Oh, do we get this pull? Yeah, and we don't get... Oh! Okay, well, I guess it kind of works out. But this could have obviously been done a lot cleaner, just over to the side. The Warlock's dead. There's no contest. So there would be absolutely nothing for you to be concerned about. And it's really just... It's like a small thing. There's a lot of small laning things that pop up here. And it's obviously a lot to remember. So just always trying to keep note. If the big thing for side laners is if there's you as a core or a support, you realize you have more creeps than the other. You should either try to pull or shove the lane in as hard as you can so the wave will bounce back. Those are the 2 natural ways of getting your waves back closer to your own tower. Because notice how, despite we did this lane, these lane swaps, but Spectre's done completely fine up here in terms of CS. So while the Ursa has a good game, the Spectre obviously could have been getting a lot less. Alright, and we eat stun into some nukes here on Centaur. So this is kind of a hard lane for you, but it's one of those lanes where you just want to manipulate creep equilibrium so that you are always as far away from the CS that the CK wants to be getting. If that makes sense. So you can't really posture super aggressively unless you get a root from your Dark Willow. So a lot of this lane is hard, Centaur. I'd say because the trading from SBI in this lane is not amazing, and I'd have to go back and watch. But this is like one of those lanes where, as a core, if the core gets it, if they are allowed to press all their spells on the core is really sad. So as a support, you have to walk this fine line of how aggressive can I trade while eating some spells but not feeding, which sounds impossible at times. But it's a very fine line where if you do it properly and you play aggro up on the Skywrath and you make them use spells on you, then all of a sudden your Centaur is like, I am the happiest man in the world. Alright, so just aggressive posturing. And you as the Willow, you don't really die as long as you're not too close to the CK and eat a stun. You can always dodge his stun as well, so that's also something. So you being the one that's aggro trading on the Willow is actually ideal in this lane. And you're probably really scared, but your Centaur's not at the point where he can just stand in front of you. We kill him up here, nicely done. The other option in a safe lane, and this is also something for you, Cryptic, is if you don't think you can 2v2, which, maybe you don't think you can 2v2 this lane. That's a completely reasonable assumption to have made. If you don't think you can 2v2, you need to do something as a support that will create a 1v1 for your other core. So in this case, your core is the Centaur. In other games, it's probably your safe laner, but sometimes these lane swaps happen, so it's important to know. So if you want to keep your Skywrath away from your centaur, the best thing you can do is pull. Especially if the lane's up here. The lane's up here, as the centaur, you say, okay, I might lose a couple creeps. But as long as my support gets this pull off, or he's keeping the Skywrath occupied, you are proactively trying to change the lane state. And that's something that we see happening here, right? You're trading with the Skywrath pretty fine. You know, you maybe just kill him here. Doesn't die, but that's perfect. Your centaur is completely happy, right? He gets some wave, you get some 1v1 time versus the CK. CK doesn't really threaten him too much. You eat a nuke even. You can see that what I'm saying happens at times, maybe accidentally. But doing it purposefully is when lanes start to just like be auto won at times, it feels like. Like really good side laners, like really high MMR people, they'll see a side lane and they'll be like, if we do X and Y, then we will win the lane every time. And that's something that hopefully you can get to at a certain point. Alright, so they get this pull off, which is really bad. When these pulls happen, it's really important as a core. BSJ talks about it in a lot of his videos. They actually drag it over, but you need to draw the creep aggro back to your creeps. So you right-click them, and then move towards your creeps. Then their creeps will attack you, and you're close to your creeps, so they'll aggro over. Because I think ideally the CK should take these under tower, but he doesn't. So it winds up working out. But notice how we're 2v2ing. And we don't not really want to be 2v2ing based off of how we've been playing this lane, or at the bare minimum, we want to force them to go on the centaur while the willows are actively hitting them, which we see is kind of what happens. The willows kind of hitting them. They're trying to go on the centaur, but because the willow is in an aggressive position, in this case, it winds up working out because they eat so much damage from the willow. So that aggressive posturing in this case actually works out really well for you. And it's something that you could have probably done earlier. You could have aggressively postured on the CK, just like gone up to the side of the creep wave, click the CK a bunch, and he either has to run away or use spells on you to keep it from, Alright, but all of our lanes are going okay. Everything I've been saying are like smaller ideas. Besides this pull thing, this pull concept of creating a 1v1 for your core is absolutely critical to improving, I think. It applies to every single side lane, off lane, and safe lane. If you don't think you can win a 2v2 trade where everybody uses their spells on each other, and we're both like kind of static laning together, if you don't think you win that trade-off, then something else should be happening in the lane. And that something is generally pulling most times. But, I mean, again, we're still very happy. Like, our centaur is doing okay. He's died once. Now, that's kind of life. I would note, probably, TK, I don't know what boots really do for you in this lane, because most of their damage is just nukes being thrown at you. So the boots, in my eyes, do seem like a bit of a waste of gold, whereas instead you could have gotten more regen or a faster ring of health. Because really, you want to get to these HP items as soon as you can, because as long as you're relatively sustained in this lane, you'll be fine. So just something to point out, because the boot right now you're kind of just sitting here at 400 HP with boots, and you're not even walking over to buy your item. I guess we're like waiting for regen or something. But this is like the worst possible feeling is when is what's happening right now. Right, but the lane is pushing in, and now we don't have a ringer health. But we're kind of just soaking experience. And we're going max retaliate, which is okay. I think that if you had you guys together, you and SBITK, if you and TK and that whatever, you get what I'm saying. If both of you, I think at the beginning of this lane had said, we are going to play aggressive and use our nukes actively on them, then you maybe could have wound up going for a max W build, and you could have just played super aggro with your Willow catch. I think that's something that could have been done. But given the state of the game, this seems completely okay. It does feel really bad as a Centaur to just kind of be soaking. I'd say general rule of thumb is you want to be as high HP as possible as CK. So getting these early Ring of Healths and stuff that we see are generally with the intention of being as high HP as possible. Why do you want to be as high HP as possible? You could take a second to think about it. Pause the video or whatever. You want to be as high HP as possible because as a high HP hero, you have 1100 HP, 3 armor, you're pretty damn hard to kill in one go. Which means that the enemies need to all-in kill you, ideally. Because it's kind of, you know, if they're not really killing you otherwise, and if they can't all-in kill you, or they bring not enough resources to do so, if you have these early sustain items, then their harass doesn't matter as much. They've used resources for effectively nothing in a lot of these cases. Now, if they use resources and you are shoved out of the lane because you don't have these early regen items, then it becomes useful for them. So there's a difference in what the enemies are getting for their harass. Our top lane is very happy. We have a free farm Ursa, Viper. Also, pretty free farm. He's max W, that's fine. He's going to be farming. I'd say, pausing out here, this is about the time where as a team we want to start thinking, how do we get early objectives? So what's changing that lets us get these objectives? Your Ursa's already in the top lane. So he doesn't really want to move anywhere. He's completely happy top. If he gets shoved out of top, then the game gets a lot awkward. But because your carry's already top, it's very natural for your mid, probably once he has bots, to just get a rune, run top with bots, force the Spectre out, and get the tower. You don't have great tower hitters, but as long as the Viper comes up there, nobody's going to be able to walk up there. So why Viper? Well, he is your strongest hero by far. He's the one that's kind of gonna make the gears spin. So I'd be as a team, as we approach the 10-minute mark, is why I'm paused here. This is a perfect time around 8-ish minutes, thinking, okay, how are we gonna use these 10-minute cardies? If there are some cases where your Viper, he might not want to leave mid. And maybe because just he's dumpstering the other mid or whatever, but he doesn't want to leave. He wants to hit the mid tower. There's a cardi in the mid lane. US supports then should try your best to come to your strong hero with the 10-minute cardies. So wherever he's going, the support should be going, because at this point the laning stage has will kind of break down because teams are actively trying to do things on the map. I'd say best case scenario here, 10 minutes come, your Viper goes top with probably both supports, maybe one. You could probably just do it with only the Viper and the Oracle, like these 3 heroes. You either kill the Spectre or you force him the heck out of there. And because Viper's there, nobody's going to be interested in trying to defend, because this is a level 9 Viper. Level 8 right now. He'll be level 9 at 10 minutes. Level 9 Viper at this top tower, nobody's going up there. So, and if they do, they die. So that's just what I'm probably looking for in these coming minutes here. Kind of just farm. So we do get our regen item eventually But we are very sad on the Centaur. You know, it's partially because we didn't. I mean, we're kind of in a poor matchup. We didn't play lane amazing. It happens. That's how it goes. So this happens. But while it's happening, we're going on top. Get a double kill. Works out pretty okay. We're hitting mid. Maybe not the intended result of all of these things happening, but not too terrible. We do know that the Spectre has TP'd mid. The Invoker has TP'd top. I honestly, if my Viper was interested in fighting top TK, I might just go up there and be like, hey, they can't bring Spectre. Maybe they can with Haunt, like, super late. Let's just run at them with 4 or 5 heroes and make sure we get this tower here. It's now 10 minutes. Things didn't go the way we maybe wanted to in our initial progression. That's what happens sometimes. But I hope to see identification that the certain people have TP'd. So how can we abuse the fact that people have TP'd away from certain areas? Looks like we may have had that idea. We brought our Willow bottom to try and go on the CK. It doesn't really work super well, but he dies. This works because, well, their Invoker TP'd top, right? So we have that idea in our heads that something will happen. So I really like this move. And it looks like we get our hood. Okay, he does not die for this, but that's a feels good death. We're getting the top tower for this. They're not getting bottom tower. Oh. Game progressing significantly smoother than last game. We have now taken this top jungle. So this is going to be all of Ursa's space. This is all Ursa. As a support, now Cryptic, I see you have 2 wards here. We've taken this top tower. Me as a support, I'm saying, I want to get wards in 2 places. To protect my Ursa, or early vision on where we want to be going next. The natural next progression is always going to be mid. So as a support, a lot of times after you take this tower, the natural progression is to come in here, get a deep ward down somewhere. Here, this will protect your carry. And then you can run over, you can get a ward behind the tower, you can ward up here. You can ward a lot of places. And the very natural progression is to just go towards mid now with your other heroes. You're going to leave your Ursa top, and you're going to bring your Oracle and Viper towards mid. Our Centaur is, well, he'll die here. Or he had died, but honestly, as a Centaur, I don't even know if I want to be down here. I might just say, I mean, it's probably fine for you to be down here, so don't worry about it too much. All right, Dark Willow goes mid, perfect, and we see that we naturally were drawn towards mid as supports. All right, our Viper's here. The only thing that's maybe missing is that we have aggressive vision behind in their jungle. And note, if we had placed aggressive vision, we would have found all of these stacks. Holy shit! So that would have been 1 extra bonus. But we know our Viper's strong. We know our Ursa's super happy top. So we're just going to chill mid. This is completely fine. What happens here? Viper gets a haste. TP's bottom. Doesn't seem like an amazing usage. I'd say bottom is the last place you want to make aggressive moves. Why is that the last place you want to make aggressive moves? Because Centaur is actually your weaker hero here in this current sense. He had a poor lane. He's kind of sitting bottom trying to recover. He doesn't want to be forced into engagements. Viper, as a hero, wants to go where he can most easily pressure. Bottom is the hardest place to pressure because they still have a tower, and it's close to where the enemies will already be playing, right? We know the enemies will be playing there because we've taken over their top triangle, or this top jungle. We know that we know Spectre's here, but we know nobody's not where Ursa is or behind him. We know that they're probably not in this area, which means they're either in their triangle or their bottom. So making moves towards bottom when you are ahead is essentially inviting the enemy into good fights, which is the last thing that you would ever want when you're ahead. When you're behind, it's a different story, but looking at this current game. Now we forced our poor centaur, our poor miserable centaur, into this awful death. And he's sad. So the time has come to probably leave bottom. Hopefully we don't TP back down there. This tower appears to be dead. And we don't. Okay, perfect. We've taken the mid tower off of this. This is really nice. Punishing. Our Ursa is progressing extremely well. Viper was progressing extremely well. He's, you know, little sadder because he died, but still pretty okay. Yep. Ursa, they entered Ursa's area. So they get a kill. And now we can do this. This move is actually okay now because we're bringing numbers. I didn't like Viper's rotation towards bottom like that because it was really forced. It was just him going on the CK with a low damage output other core. But now we bring 4 heroes here. Our Ursa is comfortably farming top. If you guys are able to take over bottom, they have nowhere to play. Or maybe it's just their triangle. So with this move, you're kind of cutting off a lot of the map. However, the last thing that we want is to get too sucked into playing bottom. Save this guy. A lot of spells being used. But yeah, this move, our initial move bottom was good, but we know they're all going to be here. I'm not going to beat a dead horse, but we know they're going to be bottom. We've hopefully learned this from the video, and hopefully the reasoning makes sense as to why we know they'll be here. So forcing engagements where they are is it's really hard. What could be happening instead of us being in this area bottom? Well, Ursa's going to farm top. Viper can shove in mid. And we identify that Viper is our strong hero. We talked about identifying our strong heroes. What do we want to do with them? We want to play behind them. So we identify, okay, we want to play by our Viper. He's going to shove in mid. Ursa's going to play top. He's going to farm up here. And we're going to play behind the Viper in a way that enables Viper to posture aggressively here. Right? He's going to aggressively posture. Maybe not hit the tower, but he's just going to constantly push this mid wave in. When you have a strong hero that can push in this mid wave, you should try to enable it as much as possible, because the mid wave is the wave that connects the entire map. When the opponent's mid wave is shoved, heroes will always be obligated to come and defend, which opens up so much of the side lanes to do stuff. And maybe in thinking about it in terms of this game, if you shove in mid, one or two heroes have to come and defend it, maybe more, and Ursa is completely untouched. There haven't been any moves towards the Ursa yet, but there could in theory. Alright, so we get a little overzealous. The initial move bottom was good. We had forced rock, and then we maybe we went a little too hard. Alright. Take a quick drink. Alright. But, I mean, we're still not too upset with this map, right? We still have Ursa with the literal most space I've ever seen a carry ever have. And because we had set up vision for him top. He's able to avoid the gank that comes. Nicely read here from Yacht. He TP's mid. This is hopefully communicated that they were probably smoking top. We're going to see Hero show here on our vision. Ika is going to shove out bottom. This is textbook. This is perfect. I love what I'm seeing right here. We've gotten so much space. Okay, TK. Just go blink. Don't overthink it, man. Don't overthink it. Blade Build might seem kind of cool in theory, but that's not your job. Your job is to start fights, find the backlines, sit in front with your Viper. Alright, it might feel kind of terrible because you're having a poor game and you're getting Skywrath ulted, but yeah. Alright, so good pausing point here. We have now effectively read the enemy's movements. I'm seeing a lot of lines being drawn here from TK, and I'm pretty sure it's exactly what I'm thinking. The natural move, right? We avoided their gank top. We saw them top. They don't want to be top though. They know you have vision here. If they stay in here, that's the easiest smoke move of all time. But because they can't stay here, they are obligated now to run back towards their triangle. They're coming back towards bottom because that's where they have vision. They most likely have vision bottom. Which, I mean, looking at the replay, they actually don't. But this is where they feel strong. Because it's where they've kind of been fighting this whole time. It's closer to where all their heroes are. It's more natural for them. But we don't really want to be bottom. Which I believe correctly gets identified. So now we are going to shove top and mid. We're going to be farming 2 lanes. TK is farming the jungle. And now, because their mid lane is kind of being pushed, somebody's going to be obligated to show. It's Spectre. I think... I believe we're just waiting for BKB on Viper. Maybe. And maybe an item on TK. But this is very efficient map usage, right? We're farming the triangle out in Ursa. Top is getting shoved. A support is farming mid. And now we're gonna walk into Roche because the enemies are showing bottom and we have an Ursa. This is yep. Walk in, we get Roche. We're gonna look to smoke. Oh. Alright, TK eats a gank bottom. Alright, so a little bit of stuff. Roche is one of those objectives that you get, and you should have some semblance of an idea of what you're doing with this Aegis. You didn't just, maybe you just walked into Roche off of a whim, but when you get it, you are the strong team. You are the ones that have 2 lives on your strong hero generally. Which means that you want to be the ones that make moves. So supports, we are walking bottom. What purpose do we have bottom? Do we want to defend this tower kind of half-heartedly like this behind our centaur? We think they're going to go on our centaur, so we want to counter-initiate. Maybe that's an idea. If we have an idea behind the supports coming bottom, this is fine, but it looks like we're kind of just wandering right now. So there were a couple options available. We could have you guys as supports could have either 1, gone bottom, S2, sat behind the centaur, kept TPs available to the tier 2 for your Viper and your Ursa to come into. That's idea 1. Idea 2 is you say, Centaur, you're on your own bottom. We're going to shove in mid and top as aggressively as we can, and we're going to take this top tower with our Aegis. That's generally the practical solution, especially if you're still waiting for items on like your Viper and your Ursa. Taking this trade, or I mean, it's not even a trade. You're going to be taking this tower, and they're going to be trying to kill your Centaur. And then they're going to have to try and take the tower with no tower hitters. So instead, we do this all right, this is perfect. So instead, we kind of do this best. We try to do the both, I guess. So it looks like they went on our guy bottom, and then we took a fight after, which is completely fine. But we're not necessarily prepared for it. So we get sucked into having 5 heroes bottom. Yop comes in, though, which is completely fine. So it winds up working out fine. I'm just saying it could have been done slightly cleaner. Right? It looked like your supports wanted to go bottom. And then you guys just like bailed on the idea. If you want to, if as an Oracle, you want to go and just sit behind your hard to kill hero, that's fine. And then you TP in help after. That's a completely reasonable thing to do. So just have some confidence in it. Also, small note, I like carrying salves on me as an Oracle or when you ulti, because it doesn't get cancelled. So that's Alright, we walk into their triangle. They used rock. Okay. Unfortunate. That's how it goes sometimes. DK is probably dead here. Alright, this is just a, I mean, it's a slight overextension. We dove a little bit too far. This is one of those plays you probably realize is a mistake to go too far after it happens. So it's okay. These things will happen. It's important to, however, take note of what the ideal play could have been here. Alright, so we get this Warlock kill. We get this Warlock kill. They've used Rock. We've used Stampede. We've used our Viper BKB. We really want to get this kill onto the Invoker. It's really hard, though. We're diving their tier 1s. Our Ursa is nowhere near us. So in a hindsight is 2020 kind of idea, in a way, if we just back together, supports kind of just trail off to the left here. The cores come back down towards this way. The very worst case scenario out of this fight, if we just, you know, kind of back together here, is nobody dies. Or maybe one person dying. While that's happening, Ursa's taking top. So you're still progressing in items in some way. But this is like one of those things that even if it works, it's like not the best play because it's just like a low success chance, right? Like you have two heroes without catch trying to run after an Invoker. We've already used Stampede. Our supports are trailing back here. They're going to try and dive this, but this is the best possible place that the enemies could fight once again. That seems to be a recurring theme. So we want to generally, when we are ahead, avoiding the places our enemies want to try and take engagements is generally ideal. Unless we have an initiation tool that can change it, or we're super ahead. There's other factors, but general rule of thumb. So we're going to fight into where their ideal spots are. This guy gets away by the skin of his teeth. And now the fight is really awkward. Even now, it's like not the end of the world. Just bail on your guy. Right? We bail on CK here. We say, all right, you're dead, brother. Godspeed. Everybody else gets out, but Viper tries to help. This is what we call save a friend syndrome at its finest here. Right, so with that we kind of prolong the game a little bit. They take bottom. We're still extremely farmed on our Ursa. But now we have Blink, we have Aegis. All right, Aegis is now out, but we still feel strong, which is fine. So we're gonna smoke. Where are we smoking to? Okay. Smoke. We find the Warlock at the beginning of the fight. That seems pretty good to me. Perfect. Yep. That's a great smoke. Maybe not the. I mean, breaking on the Warlock kind of sucks if they had bailed. Right? If only the Warlock dies, then I'd say it's a bad smoke. But you get a good fight off it. You get this tower. Viper goes top here to shove this out. Very clean. We get a nice deep ward into their triangle. We're going to farm backwards. And, oh, okay. Viper should be shoving this. It's just a map efficiency thing. He's going to... Okay, TP. Never mind. It cancels the TP bottom. Alright. Once again, we appear to be approaching the area, the only area that we know the enemies are going to be. But we don't force it this time. Our Viper is top. Yob finds a freebie. Alright. Spear. Spectre gets away, but okay, because we're winning the fight. And we're kind of just at the point where we are so far ahead on our heroes that we can walk in with Ursa and not care. But it starts because we... How does it start again? Just kind of out there. You find a pick off. You can take a fight now because you found a pick off. You see these heroes on this ward. Oh, we kind of missed the stomp. Oh yeah, it's life. Spectre gets away, but we chase everybody else down. And maybe a couple of mistakes as the game progresses, but I want to move on to the next. So it looks like our prioritization on who is playing what lanes is getting a lot better. I'd say our fight choosing is probably the sketchiest thing right now. That's what I would take a gander at. I think there's a lot of improvements that can, like a lot of small things that can be improved on the laning stage. Like small things that will help make them easier. Some itemization things as well that we had talked about. Game has crashed. Perfect. All right. Back game here. Pull up the second game here, which was significantly longer.
See you next time.
Ignore the music. That close out of Osu apparently. Possessed application. Okay. All right, we're back. On to game number 2 here. Game 2. Can't see Witch Doctor. Alright, again, not going to go super in-depth into the drafting. Drafts are always kind of strange in these, but we... First phase, pick Undying. We banned out Lena. I really like this Lena ban, I believe. I didn't mention that. And we immediately pick Sand King. We ban out all of the Sand King counters. Then we pick up Dusa here. We pick up Dusa because we think it's good versus CK. Okay. I mean, the hero's probably good enough still to... I'd just be careful. Like, you know this guy plays Invoker. Invoker is probably one of the better heroes versus Dusa. It's a dangerous game when drafting. You could have very well just picked Dusa at 18 unless you were super scared of it. Faceless Void, we banned Bristleback. Those seem like okay bans. And we pick up Leshrac. Do like me some Leshrac. I would say you have to be really careful when picking Lesh. Because it is a hero whose biggest weakness is single target focus. So CK, single target focus, they'll have Inkswell and Maledict on top of it, as well as whatever carry there's going to pick is probably going to be some sort of single target DPS hero. So I don't hate Leshrac pick. I just say it can be scary to play the hero in games like this because you are naturally frail until you have items. All right. Let's do this thing, get into the game here. So it looks like we're making a similar move as to what we had made before. This time we apparently know that we're putting the Dusa versus the PA, so we're gonna start with the stick on our PA. I generally don't like aggro laning with heroes like Medusa. Why don't I think it's because why exactly don't I like it? I would rather have Sand King, a Sand King versus a melee hero, and have Dusa have a slightly worse laning stage if that's what we're worried about. From an overall game standpoint, Sand King is going to be your early to mid game tempo creator along with the Leshrac. Dusa is going to farm ancient camps during that time. So the Dusa having a worse start is okay because she has such a natural catch-up mechanic. Whereas if your Dusa has a really good lane, it's like cool. It maybe accelerates our end game scenarios by 5 to 10 minutes, but the game doesn't change out of the laning stage as much. Hopefully we can follow that a little bit. So, we're going to put TK, it looks like, in this top lane once again. The other reason I think it's awkward for this game in specific is because you have Earthshaker. And Shaker does literal jack all in this top lane. At least if he's bottom, you at the bare minimum you can creep skip and get your offlaner solo experience. You can, I mean, you have double stuns down here, so like you can still be kind of aggro. That's another reason why I dislike it. Deuce is one of those heroes that it's kind of awkward to aggro lane with as well because you're so freaking slow. If the lane's not under her tower, she's a liability practically, especially in the this off lane. The off lane is otherwise known as the long lane, and the safe lane is the short lane. It's the long lane because the distance that somebody has to travel from here back to here is significantly more than like here back to here. It's just harder to survive. Right, but we do. I still like. We're still like, okay, our Deuce is gonna have a fine lane. I'd say if you're really that scared of lanes like this, you shouldn't pick Undying. That'll be my final draft note. Undying is a hero that wants to bully. He wants to be in your face early. He wants to secure the lane for your carry. You don't feel like you can do that? There are better 5s for the game. Alright, so TK, you go stun level 1. I actually probably would have gone Caustic. I guess maybe you went stun to survive, but having Caustic versus a melee, this is like a fine lane still for you. This is not a lane that I think you should accept that we're going to trade farm. Maybe I'll be slightly behind. If I have Caustic on creeps, the CK has so much trouble walking up. Especially if you know where the Grimstroke is. I'm not telling you to like feed, but it's you can be more aggressive than I feel like you might be in this lane. That being said, we walk up and try for the range creeps. It's a little awkward. Yeah, it's really hard to just like walk up and right click creeps as Sand King, which is why you either need to be Sandstorming or Caustic. But you go level 2. And we see already, right, with one wave of the Caustic and the CK, yeah, he has trouble actually being in the lane. So, alright, we'll get some runes. Go the Sandstorm. This is where you pull. You missed the pull. This pull is really unlikely. So it probably would have been better to, when you see this pushing SBI, to just come over and pull the small. Lane is always going to shove into them because you have the Sand King. Sand King just like eats creep waves. So you should always be looking for the minimum pulls. Stacking and pulling is obviously always better. But if you don't find time to, it's okay to do so when you have a hero like Sand King. Right, we had actually killed the Dusa, we had killed the PA, which worked out pretty nicely for us, but it's just awkward. I don't know. I feel awkward watching this. It's hard for me to fully explain it. Just the Fisher block. That sucks. Alright, pause here. Take a gander. The pull's not available. We had pulled small. Grim is coming over to try and contest you. You have a 1v1 here. This is best case scenario. If the Grim's over here fucking with the Earthshaker, that's like the same as the last lane SBI. If you're creating a 1v1 for your Sand King, this is actually a lane that he wins. He wins this 1v1. Especially if there's creeps. So this is best case scenario for you. Sand King is a happy camper. Lanes are going pretty well. That'll happen when the Ardusa, I guess we killed. They try to be aggro, but Deuce is down here, so this is fine. I mean, again, Deuce is still hard to kill, so I'm not saying it's terrible. Just maybe not what I would have done. We're getting a lot of pressure. And we actually come over here and we found this kill. And we keep it rolling. Double stuns. Don't dive. Okay. Take the kill. We go back over. Get back to our creep wave. We're level 5. We go the second level of Sandstorm. I really like that. What do we spend this gold on here, TK? I am low on mana. I think at this exact moment, I would ferry out a wand and like 2 mangoes. Yeah, like a wand and 2 mangoes. You're fine on health regen. You don't really need anything else. And I mean, you could go if you wanted to go Veil. You could fly out a Sage's Mask or something as well. So I noticed there's a lot of downtime in buying items, smaller items during the laning stage. And I think it's a large result of not necessarily knowing what our item progression is going to be before the game starts. So it's coming back. At the beginning of the last game, I had said we should hopefully have some sort of semblance of an idea of how the game's going to go, what items we will want on heroes. So what is my specific hero's itemization? By thinking about that, you'll make your item decisions in the lane easier because you'll naturally want to progress towards those items. So getting like Juan Bassi when you had the gold, I think that's completely fine. Alright, we're got a full wand on Undying. We're laning versus PA. Not a whole lot to do. They go on TK here. Wait, what happened? Brought a sentry. Like they just hit you with the nuke here too here. This is also one of those things you could buy a casual cloak, which I think is super undervalued when you are playing heroes like Sand King that rely on them going on you. Well, you want to be as hard to kill as possible inside your sandstorm. So, like a wand and then a casual cloak or like stuff like that. Just thinking about how the enemies will kill you and itemizing to prevent that. Alright, so we buy a Bassi. Perfect. Could have bought the wand as well, I believe. But we get the kill. Okay. We probably chased too far. It's really hard to get into that habit, though. When you play against Invoker, you cannot chase too far. It's so easy for him to just TP rotate as a Quaspex Invoker. And now we kind of have to make the walk of shame here. Stack? We do. Perfect. Right. Okay, so we've kind of died a couple of times here. And it's really just not having sentry control. If you want to play in lane as Sand King, you need to have sentry control. And if you don't, and you think you'll just die, just go stack, farm your jungle, wait for the lane to shove in. There's a really good replay of Mind Control playing Sand King. I believe it was before the major, but in the DPC, is it Mind Control? Ooh, not Mind Control. I'll find it after this game, but they just did a really amazing job of playing for their own game. So what that means is, by playing for your own game, it means you're not making necessarily the highest map impact play. You are being as efficient in farm as the game allows you to. So while it might be better for you to, obviously, in an ideal world, to come shove the creep wave and farm all of these creeps, if you die in the process, it's not worth it. So instead, just going back, having your shaker stack a camp for you, you can go back, take the stack, like just keep your game rolling. You had such a great start. Dying once or twice is so crippling to a hero like Sand King. Right. So they come over. Oh, there we get a double kill. And we had TP'd bottom now on the Sand King. I think this is fine. I'm not overtly concerned. This is actually a really good TP, I'd say. You TP'd bottom because two people had died. And once again, we find ourselves on the aggressive end of plays. Maybe we get sucked into fighting a little bit too much on our Medusa, but the overall game plan idea of that is amazing, right? They go on you bottom, we TP heroes in, we get a really good tombstone. While we get a good trade, we have a core down here still, we get the tower, we kill them again. They don't want to be bottom anymore because this tower's dead. So this end trade, while the Dusa dies twice, from a map perspective, it's not that bad. From an overall map standpoint. Because your Leshrak's still farming mid. Top tower hasn't really taken any damage. Your Dusa died twice, but we already mentioned Dusa's comeback capabilities into a game. So, like, at the end of the day, it might feel really bad as these cores, but if it's played correctly, you'll have so much space to work with as a result of this tower being dead. Now we have Khan back top on TK. I like you coming back top now, because there's not really any huge objectives. You want to defend the tower. We kill him, you're going to take this farm top. Perfect. I will say, I think in hindsight, I said maybe if you had wanted to go Veil, I think hindsight, if you had just rushed Pipe, or if you had just rushed Hood in your early laning stage, it may have felt better for the game. Just thinking out. Alright, so we have a lot of cores in this top area. Little inefficiency here. Dusa doesn't want to be top. You don't want to be top, Yop. I mean, maybe you take a stack here, so maybe it's okay. Unless you plan on fully abandoning this top area, you don't want to be here. This is really scary. I'm scared for you. Winds up working out. Our Leshrak playing very greedy this game. Don't have anything specifically against that. We're making note that if I get my Leshrak has enough farm to make up for the farm that I'm losing. I think the most efficient place to be as a Dusa is always in the triangle. So anytime you can sit in here, you should. It's just 10 times more efficient most of the time. DK, you get shoved out of mid. This is really awkward. You don't have a TP either. Perfect. You don't leave. Yeah, you kind of want to be on map as much as possible as Sand King. So you're gonna defend this tower. You're gonna. This is brave. Okay, Yop shows up, steals a couple CS. Hey. At this point, we've said screw this top lane. We don't care about it. However, what do we note? Because this bottom fight went so weird, we never took the time to clear this area out and establish vision control of bottom. And it's really easy, you know, it happens because, you know, a fight happened, a lot of people died. But it's really important that when you get this early tier 1 like this, with a couple of heroes, 3 or 4, whoever that you think is needed, that you come back through here, you establish control, you get vision control. Because otherwise the PA is actually going to be allowed to play down here for free. Deuce is going to sit in the triangle, and the PA is just going to sit in here. And I'm not sure what we were doing there, but there's no pressure on the PA bottom. If she's allowed to sit down here, there's no pressure because there's no vision. There's no vision because we don't feel comfortable playing down here. So we need to in some capacity make it so that we're comfortable for people to be bottom, to play bottom naturally. And I mean that all stems from vision. Okay, interesting tombstone. We thought they were pushing. Zoning tombstone. But do we notice our map is really small? And I think that's partially because your Leshrak is being insanely greedy. Our map is really small because we don't have a lot of ways to make plays. So, That means we need to try and be as efficient as we can on the map, which means people need to be actively shoving lanes at any possible time. I think as Shaker, and I guess Undying can't really, but like as Shaker, there's going to be a lot of times that you could probably just be top. Right, a hero's not going to be directly top. You come up, you farm a wave with Fisher, with your W, shove it out, go back, hide in the trees, maybe TP out. But little things like that gets this lane shoving in. You shove in bottom, you shove in mid. A lot of information received by shoving in lanes. Leshrak's going to go here. This is like an okay setup. It feels really bad that we aren't that Lesh can't come in here with vision and like come backdoor this tier 1. Instead, we're kind of stuck trying to defend this tower with our Sand King. Again, your build doesn't indicate you want to defend towers as Sand King, which is just a game identification thing. If you were to probably look back on this game and be like, oh, I want to defend towers, Veil doesn't help you do that. An item like Hood or Vanguard would help you do that. Or a bunch of small items like bracers and shit. And that's where being able to read how the game is going to go, being able to read what your job is, impacts a lot. Not that it's a flame. People misread games all the time. But it's hard to defend towers as Sand King when you don't itemize correctly for it. So we lose a bunch of heroes here. They get the tower. Which is, that's rough. I don't know if there's an easy way to defend this tower. Besides putting the Dusa in front of it. Is probably your best bet. She's the hardest for them to go on. But what they did was pretty clean. They brought 5 heroes. They put a ward on this high ground. Oh, that's your ward. Never mind. They brought 5 heroes. They felt strong. They came with the Cardi wave, taking note of a lot of the good things that they did there. It's hard to defend it when a team makes a good play as a team. It's hard to respond well because it's just a good move. But we're okay. Deuce is in the triangle. We're waiting for TK's blink. Lesh is going bots, so Lesh going bots essentially to me indicates that he has no intention of fighting. He just wants to shove lanes for 10 minutes. Which, I mean, you could argue is actually probably the right decision in this game. But it's kind of awkward for him right now. He's waiting for his bots. Okay, that's fine. Find TK once again. Find oof. Alright, so this is important. So did we have what happened after we respawned? What did we do? We TP'd mid here on TK. We walk out on Undying. Okay. So it is very important to note. This is a game read thing. The Sand King, you come up here. You know that they're not top. We have a ward up here. There's also probably a reason that Yop is not in his triangle. I'm guessing he was spooked off by Invoker. Which means that if they want to be in your triangle, they have to have 4 heroes minimum. Which means if you want to go into there, you need to have at least 4 heroes. Probably 5. Because that's just what it takes to take back this triangle area. It's really hard for the Radiant to hold this. So if you get any sort of vision down, you find a kill, the enemies immediately have to run. But because you don't have any vision here, they feel fine. They just want to fight. We kind of lackadaisically walk in here. We get caught. Then Yop gets caught on a ward. I call this lazy gameplay because it feels like you didn't respect the opponents to punish you. And that's not a flame. That's how it comes off to me. You have it also seems like we're not necessarily constantly thinking about where the enemies are and if we can fight. What needs to happen for us to be able to fight. So TK gets caught. It happens. You're out of position sometimes, right? TK gets caught, and then Yop is running in like he wants to fight, but nobody else everybody else is running away, or like nobody else is really in position to help him. It's just Yop. What that says to me is that we're not on the same page on what we want to be doing, more or less. It would have been very easy for Dusa. For everybody, the Leshrac has gone top. Dusa can very easily come into this top area. We can farm up here. Somebody could even like walk bottom, like probably the Sand King, and just shove in like 1 or 2 to 3 waves bottom. Stack. Notice how it's really awkward when the enemy is putting multiple heroes, strong heroes, in front of our faces in the mid lane. It feels really hard to do stuff, right? Because this mid lane is constantly pushing. Which means when this mid lane is constantly pushing, we need to appropriately respond with who's defending it, who's defending the middle tower, and who is shoving the side lanes. Now, Lesh and Sand King, I think at this point, are the ones that want to be shoving these side lanes out. And I think the Dusa is actually the hero that you're going to try and sit behind. I say Dusa because it's still the hardest for them to commit onto, especially if it's near towers. And he naturally has the least amount of lane shove. We probably feel like we have to play really scared now if we're Dusa because we just kind of died in our own triangle. When that's not necessarily true. We can still feel safe under our towers as long as lanes are being shoved out. If lanes aren't being shoved and you're trying to play certain areas, though, that's when it's really scary because you don't know where the opponents are. But we TP Shaker. Shaker can do this too. This is fine. Alright, we're going to shove in mid. Lesh is also bottom. Notice how, again, we don't have any aggro vision on their side of the map, which means that we feel funneled into their triangle, into our own triangle. So making an attempt as a support could just, even using a smoke for it is fine. Smoking and getting aggressive vision down is completely okay because it will set up your team up to play the map for the next 7 minutes. Alright, but we give Shaker bottom because he wants Blink, which is completely fine. We get Vision down bottom. Perfect. Lesh is going to be farming in here. He's going to go BKB. He's farming in here. I'd say the only criticism I have of the current map situation is that we did not give a triangle for our Medusa. The enemies, I guess we have a ward here. Do they see this? You don't see the Invoker, do you? This ward's okay. Generally, you want like this ward or like a ward closer towards mid so you can see stuff coming from this way. Because the Invoker just kind of wanders in through a path that your ward doesn't scout. And I'm assuming Dusa gets found here. Or, okay, well Dusa is not farming. That's really sucky if you are if you're the carry. TK is showing mid, which is fine. You're kind of the sacrificial lamb with how the map is currently being played. I think if you wanted to be less sacrificial lammy, you could just especially on a hero like Sand King, you can just like sit in side lanes. The side lane that nobody on your team wants to go to, just run up there, shove 1 or 2 lanes, go hide. Maybe like force rotations, force reactions. That's kind of how you play Dota from behind. You don't win at Dota by reacting to the enemies when you're behind. It's harder to be proactive when you're behind, which is why Dota's a hard game. But there are still ways that you can make plays, you can force movements, you can make the game awkward for the opponents. I'd say there's a lot of times where we simply just get sucked into doing what the enemies want us to do, which is fighting around where they are, taking fights reactively because they've run at us. Fights like that will almost never go well. Yop is farming. Yeah, and they have 5 heroes mid. Lesh, yep, go shove top out. We're getting, that's what we call getting sucked into playing where the enemies want us, or doing what the enemies want us to. Trying to defend the mid tower when we know there's 5 heroes there. Don't bother. It's not worth it. This, however, seems okay. This is us playing on our vision. We run away, we get gone on, and then we respond accordingly with numbers because the enemies have overextended. The difference between this fight and these other fights is that they're going on the hard to kill target. Right? Dusa, hard to burst hero. Right, just by the nature of her existence, you get a good tombstone down. The fight conditions laid themselves out very nicely. You also have Blink now on Shaker, whereas before we were kind of just like wandering into where the enemies were. A hero would die, they'd get bursted immediately. There's no saving a hero that's not Dusa at this point in the game. Right, Dusa's probably the only one that can survive the burst. But, I mean, we noticed that, right, we forced them to go onto our Dusa. That creates a lot of openings for our team fight to kind of come together. Yep, they make a grave mistake. And that's just a showcase on how hard it is to control the triangle, right? They make one mistake like that, they lose 4 heroes. Tower now. Our map has now opened back up. We TP our Deuce at bottom. Alright, what do we do off of this tower? Who's going where? What do we want to do? We have now a Blink Dagger on Sand King. Our bottom lane is going to be shoved. We have great aggressive vision now. Right, now we have these aggro wards that we've placed. We placed these a while ago. Something should happen off of this. Hopefully a smoke. Hopefully a smoke with 4 heroes with Epicenter or something. Instead, we kind of just fall back into farming the same area. If we've taken this mid tower, means we should be trying to... Oh, they're trying to Roche. This is psychotic. This is a good punish. Nicely done. Gonna give them the Roche for free there, but... Okay. Small things, nothing crazy. I'd say, if you're gonna commit for the rush like that, you gotta go for it. That's the only thing I really have to say. You've already used committed spells to make sure you get the Roche. You gotta make sure you damn get it. Kind of just walked out, and then they walked in. I mean, this was a good punish initially. They bought back. They get the Aegis eventually, which is unfortunate, but we're understanding that we are strong enough to contest fights. We have the blink on Sand King. Like, that fight start was perfect. I think we're a little bit passive on when we hit item timings. When you're behind in a game of Dota, there are very specific timings that you have to hit. These power timings that indicate that we can maybe take a fight. Right, like the blink Sand King, or I mean, there's also fight conditions, or like blink on Earthshaker. So when we hit those timings, we want to be actively looking for openings to use them. And there's just not a lot of active smoke hunting. Like, even smoking, for example, we get the blink on Sand King. And then we just kind of sit around mid for like 30 to 45 seconds. What if instead we smoke through bottom, we get aggro vision down, we shove this all the way out, we maybe cut this wave. We don't allow them to just play in our faces, right? We're trying to actively prevent that, right? There's a lot of ways that we can go about that, and that most of that stems off of looking for things off of item timings. Alright, I'm assuming they try and like high ground or take fight. I mean, you guys have better team fight. Once Zeus has items, this game gets significantly easier. Try and fight on Tombstone with Echo. Who won the fight without Dusa being there? Bottom. That's good. Do we want to be top though? Pausing it right here because we see a lot of people going top to take this outpost. I'm looking up here and I see they have like a million wards. For me, that's really scary. We should understand that they probably have vision up here. We should understand that because they were just fighting up here trying to take this tower. Good players will always ward that. I mean, if they're bad and they didn't, then that would be that'd be kind of weird. Anyways, they have vision here. We're going to be fighting in their vision in the area that they generally want to be trying to control. But we're okay. It's ill-advisable a lot of the time unless you're feeling really confident. Right? If, for example, if we're not confident, if we don't think our Deuce is tanky enough, then we by no means are doing that. But Deuce feels confident. He's got Ags, he's got ulti, we have Echo, or we have a lot of spells up, like, we're fine. As long as we are actively thinking about these decisions, right? Yop, hopefully there's hopefully Yop says, I'm really strong, I'm gonna take this output, come sit behind me. And your team's like, oh, okay. If they come fight, we'll fight. Things like that should be communicated. Alright. I don't have huge takeaways. I think we are actively taking a lot of fights in areas of the map that you don't really want to be taking fights. And that's generally just getting sucked into the enemy's tempo, is how I normally phrase it. So, actively trying to avoid that, unless you're feeling like super duper confident and stuff and whatnot, but if you're controlling an area, you're generally only fighting on an enemy's area if you're smoking there and getting vision down. Otherwise, don't think about it, because it's just asking for a bad fight, and that's like the last thing you want when you're ahead, or even if you're playing from behind. All right. As always, if you have questions after watching this, don't hesitate to ask. A little late on getting it out. I'll do another one after your games tonight, or games tonight. Whenever you watch this on Wednesday. So yeah.